This makes a man suddenly commit to you. And ladies, you won't see this one coming. I'm Antje Boyd with Magnetize Your Man, and after being a dating and relationship coach for over 10 years, here's what I have seen. And this is going to be really unexpected because oftentimes what we're focusing on is the action, right? And here, what do I do, right? What is that one thing, that one secret action step that I can take immediately, and then he's gonna commit to me? And the reality is that you actually have to understand, how do you create your reality? So this is actually what we're going to talk about, because when you understand how you create your reality, or how you negate your reality, or how you expand your reality, that will actually give you the key piece, the key point that you need to understand what makes a man suddenly commit to you. And I'm going to say suddenly because when you're on that level that we're going to talk about today, that energetic level, right? The transformational level, it's as if you want to visualize timelines meaning you're predicting something's going to happen in 6 months, right? You're predicting something's going to happen in 2 years, right? Like somebody, you know what I mean? You just have a sense, and then you're trying to translate it into some linear concept, right? And so when you live on that plane, it becomes very limited because it's logical, it's sequential, it's reasonable, right? And so it's limited because you only go as far as much as your brain, your mind can comprehend. However, if you are stepping into this transformational level, right? If you're stepping into this energetic level that we're going to talk about today, you can actually collapse what's called timelines, right? And it can feel like he's suddenly committing to you. And it's suddenly for you because it's not suddenly to God, right? But it's suddenly to you because you thought, okay, well, it's going to take, 3 weeks, or research shows, or scientific evidence is this, or, recent polls show, right? So you go on all this evidence that's really logical, you know what I mean? But you're not even open to the possibility for something totally different to occur. And you're telling me now, no, Auntie, I'm totally open for something different to occur. And I'm no, you're actually not. You know what I mean? If I were to look into your nervous system, if I were to take a peek, right, with your permission, into your unconscious expectations, I would actually see that you have your timeline laid out, when you expect something to happen, if you actually really expect it to happen, if you think that, you know what, he's not really out there. You know what I mean? He's just, you know what I mean? No, I mean, the evidence clearly shows, all I dated was ghosters and zombies and Caspers, we call them, right? Guys who disappear and then they reappear, and emotionally unavailable men, narcissistic men, manipulative men. But Antje, so I experienced all of that. So, you know what I mean? I'm going to go with that, right? Because that's the evidence, right? And I'm hey, I'm not negating that you had that experience, that those men were in your experience. It's the truth, they were in your experience, right? However, that doesn't mean that's the entire reality. That was just the experience of the reality that you had at that moment. Okay, and that was because that's what you were aware of at that given moment. You were not seeing all the incredible men, right? The brain was making sure that your experience actually matched your unconscious expectation. And so your unconscious expectation is actually for you to get disappointed, right? Your emotional home is disappointment, right? Your unconscious expectations to be let down, right? Your unconscious expectations to be lied to. And so guess what? Then the brain is saying, okay, you know what? I have to be congruent with your unconscious expectation. And so I'm going to do what I do best, which is delete, distort, and generalize reality. Okay, just I'm gonna do that. You know what I mean? Because like you're already telling me, like, you know what I mean? That's a reality for you. So then all the incredible quality men right here, I'm just not gonna take that into consideration. You know what I mean? I'm just gonna like put that to the side here, and I'm just gonna be like, it's not happening, right? Because that would be not in alignment with Carrie's expectation. Does that make sense? So the brain always operates in alignment with your unconscious expectation. Now you're asking me like, hold on, we're talking today about this man. This makes a man suddenly commit to you. What does that have to do with unconscious expectations? I'm deleting, distorting. I'm sure we're getting there, right? So what happened is you have to be willing to understand that you are not who you perceive yourself to be. And I remember when God was telling me that, because I sat God down. You know, I came to US 18 years ago, by myself, right? On a whim, and just created my life here, right? Didn't know anyone. And it was really my relationship with God, my relationship with my energy, my relationship with my reality, right? Because I didn't have any other reality to go off, because I didn't know anybody else. So I didn't have any preconceived notions, you know what I mean? It was my first time in the US, never had visited before, never had traveled there before, all these things, right? And so I was like in so many situations where I had to really rely on like stepping into the unknown, right? And then it worked out. And I was like, God, like, how did that work out? Like, for example, like I got into UC Berkeley and like, I stepped into this, like, I'm going to get into UC Berkeley, even though it's just a 2% admission chance. I get into UC Berkeley, and part of my brain was like, how did I get into UC Berkeley, right? Or I attracted like a really incredible man to my life. How did I attract this incredible man to my life? Because who I perceive myself to be should not have that experience, right? Or how did I have like this incredible experience where I got invited to incredible experiences and opportunities and all these things? Like, I don't understand. Like, who I perceive myself to be is not who would attract this kind of opportunities, right? Also business opportunities when I started to get into dating coaching, right? And God said, you know, you are not who you perceive yourself to be. So you want to write that down, right? Because when you say that, you just really want to understand what that means. Like, you are not who you perceive yourself to be. This is like a really complex concept, right? Because it's really saying, essentially it's saying that who you think you are, the identity that you have, the behavioral patterns that you have, even the beliefs that you have about yourself is actually not who you are, right? It's more than that. It's that and more, right? It's not like that's not you, right? That's part of it, but it's just a part of it. It's not all of it. Right? Now it's like, well, but then God, like, how do I make that distinct? Because I mean, I have all this disappointing experiences from my past. And so it kind of validates like, you know, this is what I'm worthy of, or this is what I should be receiving. This is what it's safe to receive or not to receive. And then he's like, well, you know, there is all these people. You see all these opportunities, right? How do you make sense out of that? Right? Like, it's like not in alignment with who you think you are. So why do you think those experiences come into your life? And so I was like, well, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe I have like a guardian angel behind me. You know what I mean? Maybe I have some ancestors watching out for me. Maybe it was good in a past life. You know, I don't know, right? But then God's like, no, it's actually like much simpler, right? This is actually an evidence of part of even more of who you are. Like, you are so much. You're worthy of so much. Like, you have actually so much power. You actually at such a high vibration that you are a perfect match for those incredible opportunities coming into your life. Now, luckily for me, I had already that conversation by the time I met my husband, Brody. And for those of you who don't know, real quick story, right? We met in Hawaii at a spiritual discussion group after church. And my husband told me immediately within 2 hours, like, that I'm the girl of his story. And that was after a conversation we had about David data, masculine and feminine dynamics, understanding men, understanding women. And it was just like, wow, who are you? You know what I mean? Like, it's just this match made in heaven. Like, we're just having this incredible conversation. But that was not really congruent with my unconscious expectations. Like, my unconscious expectations was either I would have incredible conversations like this. And let me know in the comment section if that applies to you. But I either would have incredible spiritual like conversations, with like-minded people, men like this, but then they would be like unavailable emotionally, right? So we would be like intellectually just like bouncing off the wall, right? Or I had somebody emotionally available, but they wouldn't not be in like personal development, and they wouldn't be spiritually advanced enough, and they wouldn't like be in the same conversations I had. So when I met both, I was like, no, this is not my reality. Like, this is weird. This is strange. Like, I don't know what's happening, right? And so, but I had to make a decision, because in that moment, and it's funny, right? Because we actually hear ourselves talk. You know what I mean? It was so crazy. My husband said, "You are the girl of my story." And I almost felt like it was like freezing, like when you see that on TV, like in shows, right? Like as if he was frozen, and then my thought process started. And my thought process was, is he crazy or am I crazy? Oh, that's pretty serious, you know what I mean? Like, because what that really means is, wait, so is he crazy? That means my reality is the validated one, right? Like, I'm right. So my limiting beliefs that I have accumulated over the decades are right. Though that's the reality, right? So my identity, what I'm worth, what's safe to receive, the timelines, all those things, how long things should take. That's the truth. Like, I'm actually right. Like, I'm on track. You know what I mean? I'm basically know it. Or am I crazy? And then what that means is that I have to be willing to be wrong. But then what does that mean? Does that mean I have to be willing to be wrong about my identity, about all the beliefs that I've accumulated over the last decades? Does that mean I have to be wrong about like my behavioral patterns, like what I'm worth to receive, like timelines I put up for myself, how long things take or shouldn't take? Because up until that point, I was never in a long-term relationship. So, so I was like, first of all, I need to get into like a relationship, and then that needs to last for a while, get to kind of like get my practice wheels on, so to say, right? When I'm riding my bike, so to say, my relationship bike. And so that was like a tough nut, right? To actually see, but then I remembered the words that God had spoken to me a couple years earlier. And I was like, wow, I'm more than who I perceive myself to be, like another opportunity, right? And that was like such a huge piece of my man actually like committing to me, right? Because I allowed him to commit to me, right? What do we normally do? Normally, like a man would say something like this, and I see this all the time. I have women get on the phone with me all the time, reaching out to me, and like, Antje, I just sabotaged it. He's such a great guy, but I'm like, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know if it lasts. And so I just kind of sabotaged it, So I kind of just became angry. So I kind of became like aggravated. I became, my rage monster exploded, like all of these things, right? And so, like, yeah, you're like basically saying, no. My reality is the right one. I continue to delete, distort, pretend, you know what I mean? That I'm somebody that I'm not. And all of these things, instead of saying, well, maybe I'm more than who I perceive myself to be, right? And so, but not only that, my husband also told me that I'm the girl of his story. And that is like such a huge, like, if you really think about it from a nervous system standpoint, when you grow up with either an emotionally unavailable dad, or emotionally unavailable mom, or even narcissistic / abusive mom, dad, right? Like, or even like aggressive, angry, right? Like, your nervous system actually like starts to like, like the receiving nervous system, right? The receiving, the receptors, they start to numb. right? They start to freeze. And then when a man actually gives you what you really desire to have, like, you're like, I don't know what to do with that. This is like, I'm totally overwhelmed. Like, I'm just going to push that away. Like, no, right? So when my husband told me I'm the girl of his story and we have this huge responsibility to humanity, it was too much for me to receive. Right, but luckily I had done some work. So that's the piece. That's why you always want to stay connected to the heavenly realm. You want to stay connected to the transformational level. You want to stay connected to the energetic level, because that's the only thing that you will be able to anchor into in those moments. Because on a logical, like human level, on a linear level, on a sequential level, that's not going to make any sense. It's going to be way too much. It's going to be too overwhelming, right? And then you're just going to sabotage it. And I still attempted to sabotage it, but not like in big ways, but small ways, broke up for 2 hours with him and so on. But the point is, what do you need to break through to be willing to be more of who you think you are, right? Because I guarantee you, there's already an available man who is your match, who is your type, who you are obviously excited about, you connect with on all levels, already around you. And this is what I see all the time with my women, right? I mean, Iman, she just met her guy within 2 months of doing this work in my program. And this guy was already around her. She already knew him. You know what I mean? Katie just met her guy after just 3 weeks of doing the work, right? Because she stayed connected to this realm, to this connection. So more could become available to her. So you don't have to move. You know what I mean? You don't have to move out of your town. You don't have to, find a new website. You know what I mean? You don't have to get another profile up on a new app, right? You don't have to even know where to meet quality men, because they're already around you. So what happens is you get to actually decide to expand your experience, expand your reality, right? And then, of course, what that means is you're essentially living in duality. And that's really cool, Christina. I'm going to read that in a moment. But essentially, you're in a duality, right? Because you're in this place where you're, whatever, how many years old, had those experiences. Everything feels really real. You live in your house. Maybe you have your kids, all these things, right? But then I'm telling you, wait a minute, but there's actually like a part that's almost like a head that is already expanded, that is already able to receive more. So you have to be willing to live in that duality, to live in that tension. When you're able to live in that tension, like, a man will actually commit to you, because he can feel that you feel worthy, right? Like, it's not like 100% because you live in that duality, So there's still like a part of you also that's anchored in the, what we call the 3D, right here, right? Where you just do your day-to-day activities, where you maybe even have the internal dialogues of, I don't know if it's going to last, or, I hope I'm worthy, or whatever it is, right? And you pray and hope and you do your things, because, of course, I mean, we're processing 2 billion of bits of information per second, and only 134 consciously. So, of course, there's going to be a big part of you that's still here in 3D. However, you will have an increasing emphasis and focus on that part that's more in the heavenly realm. That's more in the realm of the intangible and the illogical, right? Where timelines collapse and a man commits to you just like that. That's within hours. And the irony of that is, God always likes a good laugh, right? Is actually, I thought right before I met my husband, I thought it's going to take about, 2 to 3 years or so. You know what I mean? In my good linear assessment world thinking, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, about like 2 to 3 years is when I meet my man, right? And I met him within 10 days. And he committed to me like immediately. You know what I mean? And then he asked me to be exclusive after a couple of months, because I needed a moment to accept more and more that new reality, and letting go more of what I thought I was, and letting go more of being willing to be wrong. And I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, this is what the women struggle with the most that come to me. Like once they attract a man into their life, how do they make sure that they're not going to sabotage it? How do they make sure that they actually maintain that duality, right? That they, when, Patty attracted her man and bought her favorite chocolates and read her wishes off her lips, but was also speaking his truth. So she also respected him, right? And wrote him her cards and all these things, right? She had to learn, like to this is safe to receive. And like what my husband always says, it's just the usual. It's just the usual, right? So if you want to take one thing away, is what makes a man suddenly commit is normalizing it. It's just the usual. It's just the usual, right? It's not a big deal. Women are being committed to all the time. Women end up in relationships all the time. Women get married all the time. Ask wedding planners. You know what I mean? They have a full calendar the whole year. And like, but yeah, that's like a big piece, right? You want to really understand, like, it's not like any tactic or, you know what I mean, like any way how you text him. And that's all like so 3D and that's all like on the action level, right? And it even triggers more like the animal brain, which then it gets you on the primitive like survival level. It's even worse, right? Because then you're connecting with a man on a survival level. That's not a good thing because then you stay in your anxiety and he's triggering that instead of like actually like evolving out of that. Einstein always said, right? You can't solve the problem at the same level that it was created. And so again, the invitation is to move into that transformational level, right? This transformational level, heavenly realm. So Christina said, hi, this resonates so much with me. Someone from my past came into my life. I feel that all that you just mentioned, but he has been stuck in a marriage for the past 3 years as she got very sick and can't take care of herself. Yeah, and that's always like the piece too, is like in that moment, you just stay connected to what you really want, your true vision, right? Like that part that you want to be in duality because you're not in duality in that moment because you're actually giving the man all the excuses, right? But the man needs to actually, needs to really own what he really wants, like his true desire, right? Versus actually feeling sorry for his wife and just staying out of like just, pity, staying together with her out of pity. You don't want to have a man who stays together with his wife out of pity. And so that's like a big piece. It's like breaking through, Christina. So for me, it was like 5 months before. So I always say success leaves clues. You could also say love leaves clues, right? And 5 months before I met my husband, Brody, I had an epiphany. And the epiphany was that it was this very similar situation that you said, another man, unavailable, all the things. And I had to really say, my man knows, right? I had to break up with my old self that was used to getting attracted to men who in some way, shape, or form are not available, totally understandable reasons. But I got always like really like attached to them, and then I was making myself wrong. And I was, it was like, I got more insecure, right? And my fear of rejection grew even more. And then, of course, I felt more abandoned and so on, right? So this whole toxic cycle repeated over and over again. And I realized, wait a minute. And again, it was like one of these God moments. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so great. Like if you're really open, available, connected to your guidance, right? You actually get guidance. And so God showed me like this picture, how I was always waiting for my dad. I was waiting for my dad to turn around. I was waiting for my dad to keep his promises. I was always waiting, right? So I'm like, wait, there's this whole waiting theme. And I'm like, no more waiting. No more thinking about it. No more any of this. No more waiting until someone turns around or until the wife heals or until, he's washed his hamster's hair. All these things. No more waiting on that, right? But instead, I actually said, my man knows. Like in that moment, he knows and he takes action and he moves the relationship forward, right? And a month later, I met a really emotionally available man. Now, we were not a match, but he was just so healing for me. So it's really this piece, like, what statement do you want to make for yourself to be like, I'm available, right? Like, I'm here, I'm ready, and my man knows. Like, he's ready. He's ready. He doesn't need to heal. He doesn't need to think about it. He doesn't need to move out of somebody's house. He doesn't need to, you know what I mean, wait until his kids go off to college. He doesn't need to, what are some other stories I've heard? Like, I mean, I've just basically heard all of it, right? Like, I need to sell the house first, you know, I need to buy the house first, you know, I need to move to the different state first, I need to move out of the state first, you know, whatever. I've heard it all, you know, and the reality is, my man knows. I don't care. I don't care. Right? So how can you get to this place where you're like, I don't care. This is on you. This is on you. Because then you allow your man to step through this ring of fire. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey, right? Goes deeply into this. But the ring of fire, that is the transformation piece for you or him. This is where you lean into the thing you're most afraid about, the cave that you fear to enter, right? Because that then actually can show you it holds the treasure that you seek. But you have to be willing to go through that fire first, and it gets really intense, and it gets really, for those of you who have given birth, that's a good analogy. It's like going through the birth canal, right? Giving birth, or yeah, if you remember your own birth, like even better, right? But definitely also giving birth, right? It's like really intense. Like it's not dangerous, right? But it's intense. And a lot of women, when they hit that, and then men, of course, too, right? When they hit that enough heat inside of themselves, when they hit that ring of fire and they hit enough heat inside of themselves, they back off. They're like, this is not for me. This is no. I'm like, feel like way too uncomfortable, like this getting like way too hot. I don't want to lose my identity because yeah, something will melt. You know, you want to transform. You know, it's the ring of fire is transforming. What does that mean? You're losing form. That's just part of the transformation. You know, but nobody wants to do that. Everybody wants to transform, but nobody wants to go through the process of transformation, which then means pruning, letting go of certain layers, right? Letting go of stories and letting go of identities, letting go of who you perceive yourself to be, you know, letting go of where you need to be right and wrong and all of these things, but instead, like going into the fear of connection, or going into the fear of intimacy, or going into the fear of telling the truth, or going into the fear of being vulnerable, whatever that is, right? So when you hold your man to the fire, literally when you hold his feet to the fire, he has to make a decision, you know? And so that's a big piece. Then someone else said, we're in a long distance exclusive dating for 9 months. I will move to his town as my job allows it, and he's not, and we agreed that's our only chance. I want to move away from my place anyway. How do I balance it to not making him feel that I'm granted? Yeah. Well, you can still hold your own in the relationship, energetically, emotionally, setting boundaries, right? Without thinking, okay, now I made this move, you know. Now also, it's really, you know, now of course it's already a little too late, but I had the situation several times with women who were in my program, and we're always looking at, like, has the man actually talked about that? Has he actually asked you about moving to him, right? Or have you offered it? Because oftentimes we like to solve problems, and that's another thing why men is not going to commit to you. You know what I mean? When we solve problems for men, right? Like, oh, let me do the research, let me do the thing, let me take that weight off your shoulders. They're not going to commit because they don't have to feel the discomfort. They don't have to face the ring of fire. They don't have to do any of this, right? They don't want a mother. They want a lover, right? They want a partner. And so that's like another piece too. So if you actually say, you got this, I know, I believe in you, you got this figured out, you know what I mean? Then he will commit to you because he will have to solve it for himself. Meaning, he has to run it through his own filters. He has filters, right? He has lenses. He has perspectives, right, of his reality. And when he solves his problem, he has to run that through his filters, through his perspectives, through his lenses, right? And then he owns it. And then because then he owns it, it creates so much momentum. And that momentum, right, helps to continue to pursue you. Because then he goes beyond the fear of the unknown, the fear to get rejected, right? Or the fear to lose his power, the fear to lose his independence, and so on. So that's what I would say. It's like holding your own in the relationship, setting boundaries, helping him with your move as much as possible, right? So like just really this is like a complete partner exercise. Let him carry the weight. Let him carry the weight, right? Masculine men really want to carry the weight. Their masculinity, their ability to pursue you grows through challenge. And I don't mean like that you have to play games and become a challenge, but I'm saying let them figure out the logistics. Like they can organize the moving company. They can, whatever it is, right? Let them figure out all this, that kind of problem solving. That's what I would recommend for you. Then that way he holds his own container. And so like, yeah. And you know what? The piece is everything that you talked about here, Christina. He wants to divorce. It's mostly a financial, physical issue. And if he would make it official, she may get worse. He has committed to me, has asked me to be patient. But see, that's the piece that I got to, and this is different for every single person. I was no longer open to be patient. I'm not patient. You know what I mean? I'm not patient. My man knows, right? As he wants to take action, but this brings out many insecurities and trust issues. And so, it's not so much about like that he validates your feelings. You know what I mean? It's much more about what actions he takes. So one thing I always recommend, Christina, is if you turn down the volume, does the storyline still make sense? And it's a tough nut to swallow sometimes, right? It's like if I take out what he says and I just see how he acts, what do I actually see? Like one colleague of mine said, and I totally agree with that, right? Like he actually said that if there's lots of words, but the actions don't match, doesn't matter why. I don't know how much reason there is, right? Either you have reasons or you have results. If you go through any personal development training, right? Whether it's T.F. Ecker or Tony Robbins or all these places, right? Like people break through their limiting stories that they have, and no matter how limiting they are, right? So he's like, if you haven't met, the man is basically telling you, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to hurt you. And then if you're going to say, yes, I accept that. I'm ready to be hurt again. That's how you get to own your experience, right? You get to own your reality, right? You get to be like, I'm ready to get hurt again. You know what I mean? That's what a man is saying. If a man is not in a place to commit mentally, emotionally, physically, on all levels, and that really means moving out of the house, that means divorce papers are through. They're not just filed, but they're through. Divorce is through, right? Then they have to actually look at their own relationship with all of their parts, right? Where they feel like they owe the wife something. They don't want to feel like that shame or that guilt or all these things, right? This is all like ancestral stuff, right? I would never be in a situation like that, So there's like people who create certain circumstances where they get stuck because then they can live out like certain entanglements from their families and their belief systems and all of that. But you're like, you know what? I'm not going to have any of that. You go take care of that. There's people who have broken through way, way bigger challenges like this. You know what I mean? But it's going to come down to him. It's going to come down to, my husband worked with men for 10 years, so I know what the internal world looks like and what the conversations look like. And And also what can happen when a man is fully done and makes things happen really fast despite all the other circumstances that are surrounding. Same with the wife. You know what I mean? Like the wife got to say she has to take responsibility for that. I'm sorry, but you do. Like one thing I teach is like ownership. Ownership. You create your experience. When I get unhealthy, or I don't call it sick, but when I get unhealthy, I'm like, oh, why did I create this? Oh, I created this because I need, I'm, subconsciously want some compassion, or oh, subconsciously I need a break, or right, like you got to really understand like how did you create this, and if it's something deeper, something long-term, something chronic, then it's going to be like, what am I repressing? Where am I not expressing my emotions? Where am I resenting something? Where am I not grieving? You get to own your experience of your reality. So you get hold everybody accountable, Christina, like your partner, or I can't even call it partner because he's married, but like the guy that, you know what I mean, you have a conversation with, his wife, everybody creates the experience of their reality. And so that's where you get to hold people accountable, right? So it's one part to be compassionate and loving and understanding and heartfelt and warm and nurturing and all these things, right? So that's the feminine. It's beautiful, right? But then there's also like the masculine. That's about accountability, right? And that's about like, okay, that's about ownership, That's about like saying, you know what I mean? Everybody is responsible for their life. And I'm certainly not carrying your weight. Like I'm just not, you know what I mean? Like this is on you. You created this life. You said yes to this wife. The wife said yes to him or to her things or whatever it is. There's so much entanglement there. You don't want to get involved with that. You just figure it out. And then once you have figured out, come back, maybe I'm still available. But it's up to you, Christina. So of course you create your experience of your reality. But I can just tell you, this is going to be a long road. I've heard the story before, not just once or twice, but several times. I've heard the story before, and there's just a ton of resistance that he has to overcome. Not even invalidating that he cares for you, not even invalidating that he may want a relationship with you, right? But really seeing like how much it takes to break through that level of fear, panic, resistance, family entanglement, all these things, right? So again, we talked about today, what makes a man suddenly commit is really you're staying connected that you are so much more than who you perceive yourself to be. And that means you get to say no to patterns that you're done with. If you had a dad, mom who was dangling the carrot, who was making all the promises, never followed through, or, you wish they were saying, I love you. You wish they were giving you a hug. You wish they would have validated your experience or your existence even sometimes, you know what I mean? Or maybe it was a narcissistic parent where you simply didn't feel safe to shine your light, to be visible, to be seen, to express what you desire to have, right? Like that all leads into you currently creating the experience that you're experiencing. But if you're like, you know what? I'm watching this video because I want a man to suddenly commit to me. That it's very, very possible that you can have that, right? But you have to shift into a different energetic frequency, right? You have to shift into a different level of relating to yourself, of living life, of expressing yourself. And that's a transformational level, right? That's the spiritual level. That's the heavenly realm. That's the energetic level. And when you come from that place, you create so much intrigue, right? So much intrigue that the man will be, and this is without playing games or anything, right? But they'll be like, where does she take this confidence from? Why does she feel so aligned? Like, why does she feel so congruent? Like, why does she feel so present every time when I talk to her? Why do I feel like so connected to her, but at the same time, she can hold her own at the same time? Why does she feel so available and so surrendered? But like at the other hand, like she's totally grounded and totally like practical and has like a grounded career and all of these things, right? He's like just gonna be like thinking about you all the time, to the point, and he may even start to obsess over you in a healthy way, right? But like what's happened? Who is this woman? Who is this woman? And the reality is, you don't even know who's this woman, right? Because you're living in that duality with this other part of you that's creating ahead of you, that has already experiences that you're like, who is this woman? Like, what is happening? Like, how am I creating this, right? So that's a beautiful thing. You don't know. And Don Miguel Ruiz said it best, right? We are the unknown to ourselves. We are the unknown to ourselves. So the more we get to acknowledge that, the more we get to be in that tension, that healthy tension, that duality between the 3D, where I am right now, what I'm experiencing right now, right? But then also already what I'm receiving, already incredible experiences, opportunities I'm having, and they're not quite aligned with who I think I am. And it's like, well, because you're the unknown. And now you get to have like this eternal inquisitiveness that the man is like, who are you? Like, let me find out like who you are, right? And he wants to also find out who he is through you. Because of course you're like mirrors to each other. You know what I mean? All right, ladies. So if you have like more questions about that, and you're like, how can I make this happen? How can I move into this energy? How can I stay connected to myself, grounded here, but also stay connected to my internal guidance, right? To my intuition, to what's called in the Bible, the gifts of the Spirit. Everyone has different ones. I don't even have the same ones that my husband has. You know what I mean? Which then gets really fun. You know what I mean? When you guys play with your gifts. How do I connect with all of that? So if you have more questions about that and how to attract the right man for you, keep it. But then also effortlessly feel safe to receive like the commitment from him, effortlessly receive the gifts, the attention, and all the things from him. Then take my free quiz at getlovequiz.com, getlovequiz.com. And then after that, we can certainly have a conversation if that feels in alignment for you, to see how we can deepen this conversation for you so that you can have that same incredible experiences that people will be looking at you and you're like, how did you create this? Like, what is going on? Like, you are not even who I thought you are. You're creating so much more, and you feel this incredible self-trust inside of yourself. You feel so empowered. You feel so much courage to express all of who you are and to do things differently in a way you've never done before, right? You surprise yourself, and then you attract the man, and then he surprises himself, right? Like he'll be like, I'm surprising myself right now. The friends will be like, wow, he's never treated a woman like this before. Like, I mean, he's treated a woman nicely, but like this is like a whole different level. Like, you are so his muse, like you're inspiring him, right? That's what's going to happen. If you surprise yourself, then men will, right? The right men will surprise themselves by suddenly committing to you. All right. Again, if you want to learn more about that, getlovequiz.com. Lots of love to you, ladies. You are what makes this channel and what makes this Facebook group happen. So lots of love to all of you. Keep the questions coming, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.